Amaka sat in front of her mirror, gently brushing her hair as the evening sun cast a golden glow across her room. She smiled at her reflection, feeling the contentment that came with being Chijioke's wife. Their marriage, which had now spanned 4 years, was the envy of many in their village. Chijioke was not only handsome but successful, owning several businesses in town, and his wealth was often a topic of conversation during village meetings. Everyone saw Amaka as lucky, and for the most part she agreed. In the beginning, Chijioke was everything Amaka had ever dreamed of. They met at a friend's wedding, where Chijioke had been the best man, and from the moment their eyes met, it was like a storybook romance. He was charming, attentive, and lavished her with gifts and compliments. Amaka had grown up in a humble home, and being with a man like Chijioke felt like a dream come true. Their wedding, which took place just 6 months after they met, was grand and extravagant, something the entire village still talked about. Amaka had walked down the aisle in a gown made of the finest lace, and Chijioke beamed with pride as he took her hand. After the wedding, Chijioke moved Amaka into his large house, far more luxurious than anything she had ever experienced. The house was filled with expensive furniture, marble floors, and glittering chandeliers. Amaka had her own room for relaxation and a separate wardrobe filled with the finest clothes money could buy. Chijioke's affection for her seemed boundless, and in those early days, she couldn't have been happier. As the first year of their marriage passed, Amaka noticed one thing that set Chijioke apart from other men she had known: his insistence on making sure she was well fed. First it seemed sweet, even caring. Chijioke would come home from his business trips with large bags of food, insisting they sit down for meals together. He was adamant that she never skip meals, and would personally ensure her plate was filled with her favorite dishes. Amaka, a woman who had always enjoyed food, didn't think much of it. In fact, she appreciated that her husband took such an interest in her well-being. "Eat well, my dear," Chijioke would say with a smile, pushing another plate of rice and stew in front of her. "A woman's strength comes from her food. You deserve to enjoy life." At first, Amaka laughed it off, grateful for Chijioke's love and care. She would eat heartily, savoring the delicious meals he provided, and soon enough, it became a regular part of their daily life. Friends and neighbors would often comment on how Chijioke took care of his wife, praising him for being a thoughtful and generous husband. Amaka basked in the compliments, thinking she had truly found the perfect man. But as time passed, Amaka began to notice a change. The dresses that once fit her snugly now felt tight around her waist. Her once easy strides became labored, and she often found herself out of breath after simple tasks. At first she didn't mind. After all, she was happy, and if a few extra pounds came with marriage, wasn't that normal? She assured herself that it was part of life, a small price to pay for the love and comfort she shared with Chijioke. However, the changes to her body continued. As the months rolled by, Amaka's weight began to affect her confidence. She felt self-conscious in her clothes, avoiding mirrors and photos. She couldn't recall when exactly she had started to feel this way, but it had crept in like a shadow. She began to notice how other women in the village, slimmer, more agile, seemed to attract glances from men, including her own husband. Though Chijioke never openly commented on other women, Amaka could sense his eyes lingering a bit too long when a slimmer woman walked by. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Amaka decided to broach the subject. "Chijioke, do you think I've gained too much weight?" she asked tentatively, trying to gauge his reaction. Chijioke looked up from his plate, his expression unreadable. "Nonsense," he said, shaking his head. "You are perfect just the way you are, Amaka. A real woman should be full and healthy. You're a mother now, it's only natural. Amaka wanted to believe him. After all, he had always been supportive. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She remembered how confident she had once been in her slim figure, how she used to feel light and energetic. Now, she often felt sluggish, weighed down by her body and her insecurities. Despite Chijioke's reassurances, Amaka decided that night that she needed to make a change. "Maybe I should start exercising," she suggested. "I want to feel healthier for myself and for the kids." Chijioke's smile faded slightly. "Why would you want to do that?" he asked, a slight edge to his voice. "You don't need to change anything. I love you just the way you are." Though his words were meant to comfort her, Amaka couldn't shake the strange feeling that his encouragement wasn't entirely genuine. She smiled weakly, brushing off the conversation for now. But in her heart, a seed of doubt had been planted. As days turned into weeks, Amaka couldn't shake off the unease that had settled deep within her. Every time she glanced in the mirror, she was reminded of her expanding waistline, her swollen arms, and the way her once slim legs had grown heavier. Her confidence was slowly eroding. She remembered the days before her marriage when she felt light, beautiful, and free. Those were the days she could wear anything without worrying about how it would fit or how others would perceive her. In the village, she started to notice the whispers. Though nobody said anything to her directly, she could feel their eyes judging her. Women would exchange glances when she walked past, and men who once offered friendly smiles seemed to avoid looking at her altogether. Stung. Amaka missed feeling attractive. She missed the sense of pride that came with being a woman admired for her beauty. But now, all of that seemed like a distant memory. It didn't help that Chijioke appeared oblivious to her growing discomfort. Every time she hinted at wanting to make changes to her diet or suggested going for walks to stay active, Chijioke would shut her down with a disarming smile. "You're perfect, Amaka," he'd say. "There's no need for all that. Just relax and enjoy life. I provide for you so you don't have to worry about anything." His words, though seemingly kind, felt more like commands. Amaka started to notice how controlling Chijioke was becoming in other areas of their life. At first, his involvement in her daily routine had seemed thoughtful. He would plan their meals, pick out her clothes, and even tell her how to style her hair. But now it felt stifling. One afternoon, Amaka decided to take a walk by herself. She hadn't done that in months, and she missed the feeling of fresh air on her face. As she stepped out of the house, Chijioke caught her at the door. "Where are you going?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "I'm just going for a short walk," she replied, trying to sound casual. "Alone? Why?" Chijioke's voice was laced with suspicion. I just need some air," Amaka stammered. Chijioke sighed, shaking his head. "There's no need for all that, my dear. If you need air, we can go for a drive. Walking around the village is beneath you now. Besides, it's not safe for a woman like you to be out alone." Amaka's heart sank. This wasn't the first time Chijioke had discouraged her from doing something she enjoyed. Over time, his control over her life had increased, and she had hardly noticed how much of herself she was losing in the process. What had started as simple suggestions, what to wear, what to eat, had now turned into restrictions on her freedom. And yet, every time she tried to bring it up, Chijioke would wave it off with a smile, convincing her that he only wanted what was best for her. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Chijioke presented yet another large meal. There was pounded yam, egusi soup with chunks of goat meat, and a side of jollof rice. The portions were massive, as they always were. Amaka stared at the food, her appetite nowhere in sight. "You haven't eaten much today," Chijioke said, raising an eyebrow as he watched her. "You need to keep your strength up." Amaka forced a smile. "I'm just not that hungry." Nonsense, Chijioke said, pushing the plate closer to her. You're too thin, my love. You need to eat more. Remember, a healthy woman is a happy woman. Amaka's smile faltered. Too thin. She hadn't felt thin in a long time. In fact, she felt the exact opposite. But she swallowed her protest, as she had done so many times before, and picked up her fork. As she ate, her mind raced. Why was Chijioke so insistent on her eating more and more? Why did he keep telling her she was thin when she clearly wasn't? Didn't add up. Something was off, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. All she knew was that she didn't feel like herself anymore. Later that night, Amaka lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Chijioke's soft snores filled the room, but Amaka couldn't sleep. Her mind was restless, full of questions she didn't have answers to. For the first time, she began to wonder if Chijioke's behavior wasn't out of love, but something more sinister. What if he was trying to keep her this way on purpose? What if his insistence on feeding her and discouraging her from exercising wasn't out of concern for her health, but a way to control her? The thought sent a chill down her spine. Amaka turned to look at Chijioke, his face peaceful in sleep. How could the man she loved, the man who had once made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world, be capable of such manipulation? The next morning, Amaka made a decision. She was going to start making changes, with or without Chijioke's approval. Something had to give, and she was tired of feeling trapped in her own body and her own marriage. Amaka woke the next morning with a renewed sense of determination. For months, she had let Chijioke's insistence dictate her choices, what she ate, how she lived, even how she felt about herself. But after the restless night spent questioning her husband's intentions, she knew something had to change. If Chijioke wasn't willing to support her, then she would take control of her own life. However, her resolve wavered when she found Chijioke in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast. The smell of frying plantains and boiling yam filled the air, and the table was set with an array of food that seemed excessive for just the two of them. There were bowls of pepper soup, plates of akara, a loaf of bread, and a pot of rich ogbono soup that simmered on the stove. Chijioke turned to her with a wide smile as she walked in. "Good morning, my love," he greeted warmly. "Come sit, I made your favorite, fried plantain and pepper soup. You need a good meal to start your day." Amaka hesitated, her stomach already tightening at the sight of all the food. "Chijioke, I was thinking, maybe we should start eating lighter. I don't think I can keep up with these heavy meals all the time. It's starting to affect me." Chijioke's smile faltered slightly, but he quickly masked it with a laugh. "Affect you? In what way? You look perfect, Amaka. Besides, you know what they say. A well-fed wife is a happy wife." He moved toward her, cupping her face in his large hands. "I just want you to be happy." Amaka forced a smile, but his words felt hollow. They used to comfort her, but now they sounded like chains. She pulled away gently and took her seat at the table, picking up her fork reluctantly. As she poked at the plantains, her mind raced, her determination from the night before resurfacing.